The next important event that we are going to cover now is PM Swanidhi and its impact. This was an analysis which was conducted by SBI. Phenomenal impact of PM Swanidhi scheme on street vendors, an analysis by SBI. PM Street Vendors Atmanirbhar Nidhi, often referred to as PM Swanidhi scheme, is a central sector scheme fully funded by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Now, what is the objective of this PM Swanidhi scheme? Integrating street vendors into the formal economic system and thereby facilitating access to formal channels of credit. To integrate street vendors into the formal economic system and also to facilitate access to formal channels of credit. What are the key features of PM Swanidhi scheme? It is a micro credit scheme for urban street vendors to provide collateral free loans or working capital up to 50,000 rupees. It is a micro credit scheme for urban street vendors to provide collateral free working capital loans up to 50,000 rupees. Regular payments are incentivized by way of 7% interest subsidy, and digital transactions are rewarded with cashback up to rupees 1200 per annum. What are the key findings of the analysis by the SBI regarding the PM Swanidhi scheme and its impact on street vendors? Impact on women. 43% of the total beneficiaries of this PM Swanidhi scheme were women, indicating the empowerment of women and the entrepreneurial capabilities of urban females. The analysis done by the SBI shows that the impact on women was phenomenal. Why? Because 43% of the total beneficiaries of this scheme were women, which indicates the empowerment of the entrepreneurial capabilities of urban females. Community barriers have also been broken down. Almost 75% of the total beneficiaries come from non-general category, mostly OBCs, SCs, STs, whereas 65% are in the age group of 26 to 45. So, all the community distinctions and differences and various caste related barriers have been broken down by this PM Swanidhi scheme, with 75% of the total beneficiaries covered by OBCs, SCs, STs, and 65% of the beneficiaries falling in the age group of 26 to 45. Some other important findings include popularity of the scheme. The persistency ratio is increasing, which indicates the need for and popularity of the scheme. What is the persistency ratio? Obtaining second loan and repaying the first loan, and this persistency ratio is increasing, which is also indicating the need and also the popularity of the scheme among the urban street vendors. Digital transactions have increased the acceptability of digital transactions. So, this PM Swanidhi scheme has also contributed towards the increased acceptability of digital transactions by street vendors. Consumer behavior. The average debit card spendings of PM Swanidhi account holders has increased by 50% after loan installments, marking a significant change in their financial and consumer behavior. So, more and more beneficiaries have started embracing the debit card spendings, leading to significant change in their behavior, financial and consumer behavior. Also in news were the Unlawful Activities Prevention Tribunal. So, what is this Unlawful Activities Prevention Tribunal? The central government has constituted a tribunal called Unlawful Activities Prevention Tribunal, basically for adjudicating the matters which are covered under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act of 1967. So, what is the Tribunal, Unlawful Activities Prevention Tribunal, and what are its features? It is constituted or established by the central government to confirm a ban on an organization. It is constituted by the central government to confirm a ban on an organization. Under section 4 of the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, if an association or an organization is deemed or considered to be unlawful, then the central government has to refer this case to a tribunal within 30 days. This tribunal can then decide if there is enough reason or rationale for the unlawful labeling of the organization. So, according to the section 4 of the UAPA, if an association or an organization is deemed to be unlawful, then the central government has to refer or recommend this case to the Unlawful Activities Prevention Tribunal within 30 days. The tribunal can then decide if there is enough reason or rationality to label the organization as unlawful. So, this tribunal will decide whether the organization can be labeled as unlawful or not. It has powers of a civil court and can regulate its own procedures. So, this Unlawful Activities Prevention Tribunal has powers of a civil court and it also can regulate its own procedures. Indo-Tibetan Border Police Force. The ITBP force has celebrated its Rising Day ceremony very recently. ITBP is a specialized armed police force which was established in 1962. Now, what is the ITBP? What is the Indo-Tibetan Border Police Force and what is the background about it? It is one of the 7 Central Armed Police Forces. Now, what are the other 6 remaining Central Armed Police Forces? Sahasra Seema Bal, Border Security Force or BSF, Central Reserve Police Force or CRPF, Central Industrial Security Force or CISF, National Security Guards or NSG and Assam Rifles. These 6 forces and the Indo-Tibetan Border Police Force constitutes the Central Armed Police Forces. It is backed by the ITBPF Act of 1992 and the rules which are framed in 1994. It trains its personnel in various disciplines including mountaineering, skiing apart from intensive tactical training. National Cooperative Export Limited. The logo, website and brochure of National Cooperative Exports Limited was recently launched. Now, what is this National Cooperative Exports Limited? It was established as an umbrella organization for all the cooperative sector exports in January 2023. So, this National Cooperative Exports Limited was established in January 2023 very recently as an umbrella organization for covering all the cooperative sector's exports. It was registered under the Multi-State Cooperative Societies Act of 2002. Now, what is the objective of this National Cooperative Exports Limited? The objectives include increasing exports, making farmers prosperous, providing global market for organic products, gaining a place for India in the global markets for biofuels and etc. All the cooperative societies who are interested in exports are eligible to become members of the NECL by way of registration. So, all those cooperative societies who wants to export their products can register in the National Cooperative Exports Limited and can become a member of this Exports Limited cooperative. Nano diammonia phosphate liquid, which is basically a nano DAP liquid. Now, what is this nano diammonium phosphate liquid? It is the country's first nano DAP plant which was established by IFCO. This was opened in Kalol in Gandhinagar of Gujarat. DAP liquid is an efficient source of nitrogen and phosphorus which helps in overcoming the deficiencies of nitrogen and phosphorus in the soil. Now, what is the advantage of the nano DAP liquid? In terms of surface area to volume, as the particle size of the nano DAP liquid is less than 100 nanometers, it enables to enter inside the seed surface or through stomata. So, the surface area in terms of volume is high when it comes to the nano DAP liquid. The other benefits include increase in the crop yield and farmers' productivity or income and reduction in chemical usage and easy to store and also transport. Also in news was the International Atomic Energy Agency or IAEA. Now, what was the news? India and International Atomic Energy Agency has agreed to cooperate on extending the nuclear technology applications in the global south. International Atomic Energy Agency is world's central intergovernmental organization or forum for scientific and technical cooperation in the nuclear field. India has been a founding member of this agency since 1957. India is a member of International Atomic Energy Agency as a founding member since 1957. It is the world's central intergovernmental agency or forum for scientific and technical cooperation in the nuclear field. What are the objectives and what are the functions of this agency? To verify that nuclear materials are used solely for the purposes of peaceful purposes, the agency has developed a system of safeguards agreements. So, to ensure that the nuclear materials are used solely for peaceful purposes, this International Atomic Energy Agency has developed a mechanism or system called as safeguards agreement. Now, India and this agency has signed an agreement for application of safeguards to nuclear facilities in India. In pursuance to this system, India and the agency has signed an agreement called Application of Safeguards to Civilian Nuclear Facilities in India in 2009. Some other important news related to SIM, Subscriber Identification Module or SIM cards. SIM card is a microchip that identifies subscriber on a given network. It is mandatory for mobile phones to connect to any network that follows the global system for mobile communications or GSM standards. The other functions include to store information about its own ID, number, international mobile subscriber identity, the subscriber's location area identity, contacts and messages. The latest version of SIM is eSIM. So, why this subscriber identification module was in use is that the latest version of SIM known as eSIM was recently launched. It is a software loaded to a universal integrated circuit card. Electronic SIM or eSIM is basically a software that is loaded to a universal integrated circuit card. It is permanently installed in the mobile equipment. So, this eSIM or electronic SIM is permanently installed in the mobile equipment. Quick response code in food labeling. The Food Safety and Standards Authority of India or FSSAI has recommended the inclusion of QR code or quick response code on food products for accessibility by persons with visual impairment. This recommendation is in line with the Food Safety and Standards Labeling and Display Rules of 2020, and also it adheres to the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act of 2016. These QR codes should encompass or should include comprehensive details and information about the product, which includes the ingredients, nutritional information, allergens related information, manufacturing date, best before or use by date and other information regarding the product. This region was in news. Benin and its capital Porto Novo. The Ministry of External Affairs under the Government of India has stated that India is Benin's largest trade partner and a significant investor in Benin. Benin is a Northwest African city, a Northwest African country. Now, what are the political boundaries of this country called Benin? Burkina Faso in northwest, Nigeria in the east, Togo in the west, Niger in the north and Atlantic Ocean in the south. To the right of Benin is a bay in the Atlantic Ocean bordering Benin. Niger River forms the Benin's border with Niger. What are the geographical features of Benin? The Atakora Mountains in northwest forms a continuation of the Togo mountain chains to the south. The other major rivers include Mono, Kofo and Omi. The highest point is Mount Sogbaro. Other important news include the Cabinet approves Memorandum of Cooperation between India and Japan on Semiconductor Supply Chain Partnership. It was signed in July 2023 and shall remain in force for a period of 5 years. Now, what does this Memorandum of Cooperation between India and China signify? It intends to strengthen the cooperation between India and China in semiconductor devices. It It aims for enhancement of the semiconductor supply chain through government to government and business to business cooperation. The Memorandum of Cooperation between India and China aims at the enhancement of semiconductor supply chain through government to government cooperation and through business to business cooperation. It also recognizes the importance of semiconductors for the enhancement of industries and also for digital technologies. It also aims at improving the employment opportunities in the field of IT. Now, what is the significance of the resilient semiconductor supply chain for India? It is crucial for the Industrial Revolution 4.0. It is also significant for powering the renewable energy systems. It is also important for enabling green transportation and also facilitating electronic device manufacturing systems. What are the various challenges facing the semiconductor supply chain in India? India is still in a nascent stage when it comes to semiconductor supply chain. Why? Because India accounts for only 1% of the global trade in semiconductors and only 0.5% of global semiconductor sales. Lack of manufacturing clusters for building a successful semiconductor production ecosystem in India. We lack manufacturing clusters. Concentration of manufacturing. About 75% of the global semiconductor manufacturing capacity is concentrated in China and in East Asia. About 75% of the global or total world's semiconductor manufacturing capacity is concentrated only in China and also in East Asia. 100% of the world's most advanced semiconductors are located in Taiwan and South Korea. So, what are these advanced semiconductors? Those semiconductors which are below 10 nanometers, the world's most advanced semiconductors are located or concentrated in Taiwan and South Korea. Now, what is the way forward to overcome these challenges? To focus on market-based incentive program. So, a focus on market-based incentive program aims at advancing India's semiconductor research, design and production capabilities. A focus on filling in key gaps and vulnerabilities like design infrastructure, patent protection and workforce development, etc. What are the various initiatives which are taken up by the Government of India towards this endeavor? Program for Development of Semiconductor and Display Manufacturing Ecosystem in India. Program for Development of Semiconductor and Display Manufacturing Ecosystem in India to ensure the development of a robust and sustainable semiconductor and display ecosystem. India Semiconductor Mission under Digital India Corporation to drive India's strategies for the development of the semiconductor and display manufacturing ecosystem. So, the program for development of semiconductor and display manufacturing ecosystem in India and India Semiconductor Mission under Digital India Corporation are few of the initiatives which are launched by the Government of India in its endeavor for becoming a resilient semiconductor supply chain ecosystem in the world. Accelerated ice melt in Western Antarctica is unstoppable according to research. The researchers have used a high resolution computer model of the Amundsen Sea. Now, what is this research and what does this research suggest about the ice melt that is occurring in the Western Antarctica? Ocean driven melting of floating ice shelves in the Amundsen Sea is the main process controlling sea level rise. The Amundsen Sea is located off the coast of West Antarctica. So, the research says that the ocean driven melting of the floating ice shelves in the Amundsen Sea is the main process or the driving factor which is controlling the sea level rise in the Western Antarctica region. If you look at this picture, this is the Antarctica and in which you will find the West Antarctica ice sheet here. This is the Thwaites Glacier and this is the Amundsen Sea which is driving this or which is controlling this sea level rise in the Western Antarctica region. This Amundsen Sea is located off the coast of West Antarctica. This Amundsen Sea is located off the western coast of Antarctica. About ocean-driven melting of floating ice, it follows the following sequence. So, what is the sequence in the ocean-driven melting of the floating ice shelves? The melting causes the retreat of the grounding line. What is grounding line? It is the line where the ice first goes afloat. What is the next sequence? It then reduces the resistance to ice flowing across the grounding line. Faster flow near the grounding line causes more horizontal stretching leading to thinning. It creates steeper surface slopes which increases the stress that drives the ice forward. The faster flow inland causes thinning of the faster flow inland causes thinning to propagate even further into the interiors of the ice sheet, increasing the contribution of sea level rise. So, this is the sequence of the ocean driven melting of the floating ice shelves in the Amundsen Sea. What is the impact of the recent revelation of this research? Enormous impact on sea level. The research suggests or indicates an enormous or a very huge impact on the sea level rise. The Western Antarctica ice sheet, if completely is lost, contribute to sea level rise up to 5 meters. Impact on coastal cities. Over a third of the global population is residing within the 100-kilometer radius of the coast, making all these cities vulnerable to the sea level rise. Next important event is the UN Convention to Combat Desertification. Its first ever data dashboard was launched or released. Now, what is this UN Convention to Combat Desertification, or what is this UNCCD? Organization was launched in 1994. It is the only legally binding framework which was set up to address the desertification effects and the effects of drought. It is the only legally binding organization or framework that was established to address the effects of desertification and also of drought. A total of 197 member countries are parties to this convention, including 196 partner countries and 1 European Union. So, it has 196 member countries as parties and 1 European Union as a party to the convention. India is also a signatory to this UN Convention on Combating Desertification. The Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change is the nodal ministry that oversees the implementation of the convention in India. This is a brief history about the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, or UNCCD. Now, let us discuss about the first ever data dashboard that was released by this UN Convention. This data dashboard compiles of national reporting figures from 126 member countries, which shows that the land degradation is advancing at an astonishing rate across all the regions. So, this data dashboard highlights that the land degradation is taking place at an astonishing rate in almost all the member countries. What are the key findings of this data dashboard? Between 2015 and 19, at least 100 million hectares of healthy and productive land was degraded every year between the span of 2015 and 19. 100 million hectares of productive, cultivable and healthy land was degraded every year between 2015 and 19. One of the key findings of this data dashboard. India's 9.45% reported land area was also degraded. In India, 9.45% of reported land area was also considered to be degraded. What are the other findings? Between 2016 and 19, 50% of the global reported land area and 37% of India's reported land area is affected by drought. Between 2016 and 19, about 51% of the global reported land and about 37% of the India's reported land area was affected by way of drought. Eastern and Central Asia and Latin America and Caribbean regions are experiencing the most severe degradation effects. So, what are those regions which are affected the most by the way of desertification? It is the Eastern and Central Asia, Latin America and Caribbean regions. So, these regions are experiencing the most severest effects of the drought and desertification according to the data dashboard. Land degradation is deterioration or loss of productive capacity of the soils for the present and also for the future. So, what is degradation or what is desertification? It implies deterioration or loss of productive capacity of soils for present generation and also for the future generations. Around 109 countries have set voluntary land degradation neutrality targets for 2030. 109 member countries have set up voluntarily land degradation neutrality targets that are supposed to be achieved for 2030. Land degradation neutrality is a state whereby the amount and quality of land resources necessary to support the ecosystem functions and services to enhance food security remains stable or increases within the specified ecosystems. So, what is land degradation neutrality? It is a benchmark which suggests that the amount and quality of land resources that is considered to be necessary or required to support the ecosystem functions and services to enhance the food security remain stable or increase within the specified ecosystems. Now, this is the land degradation neutrality, and around 109 member countries have set up voluntarily some targets that are supposed to be achieved for 2030. Now, what are the India's initiatives for land degradation? India has joined voluntarily the Bonn Challenge Pledge. India has voluntarily joined the Bonn Challenge Pledge to bring into restoration about 26 million hectares of degraded land and deforested land by 2030. India has accepted this Bonn Challenge Pledge and it is trying to restore around 26 million hectares of already degraded and deforested land by 2030. Desertification and Land Degradation Atlas of India, which was published by ISRO for state-wise areas of degraded lands. Desertification and Land Degradation Atlas of India was also launched by ISRO for state-wise areas of degraded lands. These are the initiatives taken by the Indian government towards land degradation. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development has released International Migration Outlook for 2023. This edition focuses on labor market integration of migrant mothers and also on the fertility patterns among the migrant populations in OECD countries. So, this edition of International Migration Outlook for 2023 highlights or focuses on labor market integration of migrant mothers and also on the fertility patterns among the migrant populations in the OECD countries. Now, what is migration? Migration is movement of people away from their place of usual residence, either across an international boundary or within the state. So, people moving away from their place of residence to either a different country or within the geographical boundaries of a country is considered as migration. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, has released International Migration Outlook for 2023. What are the key findings of this outlook for 2023? India has emerged as the top country of origin of new citizens in the OECD countries in 2021 with about 4 lakh new migrants excluding students. India is the top country of origin to send about 4 lakh new migrants to these OECD countries. Permanent type migration to OECD countries reached a record level of 6 million in 2022. Permanent type migration to the OECD countries has reached its historic levels of 6 million in 2022. This was basically driven by family migration followed by managed labor migration and free mobility. Germany, Poland, United States host highest number of refugees from Ukraine in absolute terms. Germany, Poland and the United States of America host the highest number of refugees from Ukraine in absolute terms. Immigrant mothers face disproportionate disadvantage both compared with immigrant women without children and in comparison with their native born peers. While migrant women tend to have more children than their native born peers, their total fertility rate is still below the replacement rate of 2.1 children per woman in the most of the OECD countries. Gap in employment rates between immigrant and native born mothers is 20%. The individual preferences and cultural factors are considered to be the main barriers to maternal employment. Migrant mothers are often trapped in inactivity due to childcare responsibilities. These are some of the findings of the International Migration Outlook of 2023, which was released by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD. Now, what is this OECD? Some important facts about OECD. OECD was previously called as Organization for European Economic Cooperation. This was later on transformed into OECD in 1961. It is an international organization which brings together member countries and a range of partners that collaborate on key global issues at national, regional and local levels. It has 38 countries as members, which includes US, Canada, Mexico, Australia, France, Japan and UK. India, however, is not a member of this organization. OECD member countries and partner countries represent about 80% of the world trade and also investment. It is headquartered in Paris, France. Cabinet approves nutrient-based subsidy on phosphatic and potassic fertilizers for the Rabi season 23-24 was also in news. Rupees 22,303 crores subsidy on phosphatic and potassic fertilizers for Rabi season was released by the Government of India, which is going to be effective from October 1, 2023 to March 31, 2024. Since 1st of April 2010, the subsidy on phosphatic and potassic fertilizers is governed by the NBS scheme. What is NBS? Nutrient Based Subsidy Scheme, which is a central sector scheme under the Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers. So, since 1st of April 2010, the subsidy on phosphatic and potassic fertilizers was governed by the Nutrient Based Subsidy Scheme of the Government of India, which is a central sector scheme under the Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers. Now, what is the objective of the NBS? To improve the agricultural productivity and also to encourage competition among the fertilizer companies and also to reduce the burden of subsidy on the government. To improve agricultural productivity and also to enhance the productivity and income levels of the farmers, and also to encourage a competitive spirit among the fertilizer companies and also to reduce the burden on the Government of India in terms of subsidies towards these fertilizers. The central government provides a fixed rate of subsidy in terms of rupees per kilogram on nutrients, namely nitrogen, phosphate, potash, sulfur on an annual basis. So, on the basis of a rupee per kilogram, The central government provides a fixed rate of subsidy on various nutrients like nitrogen, phosphate, potash and sulfur on an annual basis. Additional subsidy for micronutrients, namely boron and zinc, is also being provided by the Government of India. So, in India, subsidy for micronutrients like boron and zinc is also being provided by the government. At present, 25 grades of phosphatic and potassic fertilizers and about 18 grades of nitrogen, phosphate, potash and sulfur or NPKs complex fertilizers are covered under the scheme. However, urea is not covered under this scheme of nutrient based subsidy of Government of India. Around 25 grades of phosphatic and potassic fertilizers and about 18 grades of NPKs complex fertilizers are presently covered under the nutrient based subsidy scheme of the government. However, urea as a fertilizer is not covered under this scheme. Now, what are the benefits of NBS? To restore soil health by addressing nutrition imbalances of NPKs and also to address the issue of lack of micronutrients through the usage of fertilizers on specific soil moisture conditions and also crop needs. To improve the growth of indigenous fertilizer industry are considered to be the benefits of the nutrient based subsidy scheme of government. The Rabi crops are sown in winter and are harvested in spring. Some of the popular Rabi crops include wheat, barley, mustard, cabbage, cumin, linseed and sunflower. These are some of the important Rabi crops which are grown in India, which are usually sown in winter and harvested in spring. The Bureau of Indian Standards (BIS) approves indigenous charging standards for light electric vehicles in India. An approval is being given to an indigenous AC and DC combined charging connector standard known as IS 17017. It is the world's first ever combined AC and DC charging connector standard for light electric vehicles, basically two-wheelers, three-wheelers and micro cars. It has been developed through a collaboration among Niti Aayog, the Department of Science and Technology and two-wheeler maker Ather and other Government of India and the industry stakeholders. What is the significance of introducing a standard charger? What is the significance of introducing a standard charger? It creates an open ecosystem with interoperability that will foster better adoption of the electric vehicles. Now, one of the important significance of the launching or introduction of this standard charger is it creates an open ecosystem wherein it provides a flexibility for interoperability that will also foster better adoption of electric vehicles. It also ensures the emergence of hybrid, cost-efficient infrastructure for both fast and slow charging. It reduces the cost of manufacturing and brings down the cost of EVs also. By way of reducing the cost of manufacturing, it will also bring down the cost of electric vehicles. It reduces a range of anxiety among the customers. So, these are some of the benefits or significance of the introduction of a standard charger. What are the various Government of India initiatives with regard to the electric vehicle ecosystem in India? Faster adoption and manufacturing of hybrid and electric vehicles in India or FAME India. Faster adoption and manufacturing of hybrid and electric vehicles in India or FAME India scheme to reduce the dependency on fossil fuels or conventional fuels based vehicles. Production linked incentive PLI scheme for automotive sector to boost domestic manufacturing of advanced automotive technology. A production linked incentive scheme was also launched by the government for automotive sector, basically to boost the domestic manufacturing for advanced automotive technology, AAT. What are the various other Government of India initiatives. It has capped the maximum tariff for EV public charging. The GST on EVs was also reduced from 12% to as much low as 5%. The Government of India has also waived off the road tax on the EVs. What are the various standards that are being followed in other countries? Country name and the standard that was being implemented. In China, there is a standard called as GB/T. The United States of America follows a standard called as the American Charging Standard or NACS, which is developed by Tesla. In Japan, CHAdeMO. In Europe, Combined Charging System or CCS. These are the various country-based standards with respect to the standardizations of the charging ecosystem. Also in news was the Tribal Cooperative Marketing Development Federation of India or TriFed. Now, what is the backdrop or what is the background of this TriFed? It was established in the year 1987 under the Multi-State Cooperative Societies Act of 1984. So, this TriFed was established as a society under the Multi-State Cooperative Societies Act of 1984. TriFed is a national level cooperative body under the administrative control of the Ministry of Tribal Affairs. It is a national level cooperative body which functions under the administrative control of the Ministry of Tribal Affairs and not under the Ministry of Cooperatives. What is the objective of the TriFed? Socio-economic development of tribal people in the country by way of marketing development of tribal products. PM Van Dhan Yojana is a scheme which is directly related to this TriFed. PM Van Dhan Yojana. What are the functions of this TriFed? Institutionalizing the trade of minor forest produce and surplus agricultural produce collected and cultivated by the tribals. Institutionalization of the trade of minor forest produce or MFP and surplus agricultural produce which is collected and also cultivated by the tribals. Asian Development Bank was also in news. Why? Because it has approved a $400 million policy based loan to India for sustainable urban development and also service delivery program. Sustainable urban development and service delivery program which aims at improving the access to basic urban facilities and services in India. What is the background of the ADB? It was established in 1966 after a resolution that was passed at the first Ministerial Conference on Asian Economic Cooperation, which is held by the United Nations Economic Commission for Asia and Far East Asia in 1963. So, this ADB was established in 1966. It envisions a prosperous, inclusive, resilient and a sustainable Asia and Pacific while sustaining its efforts to eradicate extreme poverty in the region. It has a total of 68 members, of which 49 are from within the Asia Pacific. India is also one of the founding members of this Asian Development Bank. Some other key information related to this ADB includes ADB's highest policy making body is the Board of Governors. ADB's 5 largest stakeholders include the United States, Japan, People's Republic of China, India and Australia. Japan, United States, China, India and Australia are the 5 largest shareholders or stakeholders in the ADB. Also in news was the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. New Zealand has criticized India, which has demanded for 41 Canadian diplomats to leave. Now, New Zealand has criticized India's action, which has demanded 41 Canadian diplomats to leave, referring to the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. The convention was signed in 1961 and it currently has 193 member countries as parties to it. India also has ratified the Vienna Convention in 1965. It aims at ensuring and development of friendly relations among various member countries. It also puts forth a declaration or a framework for establishing diplomatic interactions between various nations. Some of the key provisions of this Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations include: it specifies the functions and responsibilities of diplomatic missions which are posted in various countries. It also lists specified rules on the immunities and privileges that are granted or provided or extended to diplomats and their missions. It also lists some special rules regarding immunities and also privileges that are granted or extended or provided to various diplomats and their missions. It also guarantees a free and fair communication between the missions and their sending state. The summit of the three basins was also in news. So, what are these three basins, and what is the summit? This summit of three basins was held in Brazzaville, the capital city of Congo, an African nation. What are these three basins? The first and the foremost and the most important basin of these three basins, Congo Basin. Now, what is the geographical territory of this Congo Basin? This Congo Basin spans across multiple countries: Democratic Republic of Congo or DRC and the Republic of Congo. Not only this, it also spans into Equatorial Guinea and Gabon. This is the Congo Basin. Next comes the Amazon Basin, which extends over 9 countries in the South American continent. Borneo, Mekong, Southeast Asia Basin. These three global ecosystems account for nearly 80% of the tropical forests and also its biodiversity. These three basins account for 80% of the world's tropical and also about 2/3 of the global biodiversity. So, of the total biodiversity that we see on the planet Earth, about to be a major chunk of this biodiversity can be found only in these three basins: Congo Basin, Amazon Basin and the Borneo, Mekong, Southeast Asia Basin. Proactive governance and timely implementation, or Pragati. Why was this in news? By the Prime Minister of the Republic of India, and recently the Prime Minister has chaired the 43rd Pragati meeting very recently. What is Pragati? It stands for Proactive Governance and Timely Implementation. It is a multi-purpose and an interaction technology enabled platform which was launched in 2015. It aims at proactive governance and also timely implementation of various developmental projects and initiatives taken up by the government. Its objects, grievances, and also simultaneously monitor and review important programs of the Government of India. The system has been designed in-house by the Prime Minister's Office with the help of the National Informatics Center.